Hello there, Tom Ulicny here. In this short video, I'm going to give you a quick reading of from two of my books. The first book I've written, which dates back 5 years ago, to the book I wrote and published about a year and a half ago, right now. First book is historical fiction. I'll read the first paragraph just to give you a feel for what the book is like and perhaps what your appetite for it. The name of the book is The Lost Revolution. It's a historical fiction book. It takes place in the Victorian era in England. The Lost Revolution, Chapter 1, Paragraph 1. It was the 44th year in the reign of Queen Victoria. It was the year of the British defeat by the Boers at Rochester Hills and of the assassination of Tsar Alexander II. It was 1881. And it was late one morning at roughly the midpoint of that year that Julian North, a file clerk for the London Times, rode a carriage down Bristol Lane in London's North End, beginning a journey that would change his life and leave a small but indelible mark on history. So right away you know that this file clerk is going to get in a bit over his head and have himself a big adventure that's going to change his life as well as change history a little bit. My latest book is Dr. Thornhill's Last Patient, and it's quite different from the Lost Revolution, as you will see. Dr. Thornhill's Last Patient, Chapter 1, Paragraph 1. Abigail stood at her bedroom window, listening to Mother's screams filtering up through the floorboards. Trying to ignore them, she peered outside, fixing her attention on the footpath below that ran out from the porch between the ragged patches of grass and into the dense woods surrounding the house. Of late, she'd spent time walking along it, out among the trees where their nettled branches shielded the forest floor from both sun and rain. A late afternoon breeze caused a rustling in the trees nearest the house. She wished she was out there now. Again, you get a sense of foreboding in this book, and that gives you a feel for these two books of mine, and I've got two others that we'll be talking about soon. So I'll leave you with that.
Welcome back to the second annual Rochester Writers Rochester Hills Public Library Author Fair. We're here celebrating our second annual in 2020 virtually, and we are speaking with Tom Ulicny. I've already messed it up. Tom, remind me how to say your name.
It's Ulicny. You had it right with the third try there.
Ulicny.
Yes,
Tom Ulicny is our author for this segment, and Tom has written 4 books. We just heard a little piece from a couple of them, and what intrigues me is the historical fiction with The Lost Revolution. The name is intriguing, as well as the idea of writing historical fiction. I imagine there's a lot of work that goes into that, research-wise.
Research-wise, yes, but with the internet, it's really a lot easier than you might think. You simply Google a question, and boy, your answer comes up astoundingly quick. So the research was pretty easy for this book, even though I did it, about 5 years ago. It was my first book, so I was kind of getting my feet wet with writing, but also learning my way around the internet, and that certainly helped things move along in an accurate way.
Certainly, research online will get you very used to the internet. So you've set us up with the main character. He is off on an adventure.
Yeah.
What adventures might come his way in your book?
Well, he starts out in London, a file clerk for the London Times, and he gets involved in a Russian an artifact seller or an antiquities seller who has this diary that was written over 100 years ago, and he's assigned to translate that diary. And in doing so, he ends up getting involved in the murder of his employer. And he feels like he's going to be accused of that murder, and uh, he tries to find the actual killer. And in doing that, he ends up it ends up taking him all the way to Istanbul, to the London Times office there, and from there to Alexandria, Egypt, and from there to a small island in the Aegean Sea. He gets involved with the Prince of Wales. There's a number of other uh, British military and political figures that play into this, as well as some of the more factual um, historical incidents that occurred at the time, including the bombardment of Alexandria, Egypt, by the British in 1881.
When it comes to historical fiction and all the research that you have to do you find that um, part of your readership, part of your fan base, are intrigued with history as well as hearing a story?
Sure, sure, I think so. And in um in fact, it was my being intrigued by a wonderful book called The Guns of August, which is nonfiction. It was written by Barbara Tuchman quite some time ago because I first read it in the eighth grade. And it's involved. It tells the story of the start of World War One in very interesting uh, style, in a very interesting style. And that's what got me interested in history, especially, and then as a sidelight to interested in to be being interested in historical fiction, which is what my book is all about.
So this is the book that kind of launched your writing career, so to speak, with
Yeah.
novels. What kind of experience in writing had you had before you went into novel writing?
Uh, Really, I've written some technical manuals. My career was primarily as an engineer and a business person. And I'd write articles, I'd write technical manuals on electronic equipment. Nothing that you might call uh, creative. It's creative, but you know what I mean. It's not full fledged imaginative thinking. You know, you have to be factual in writing those kinds of things. But I always really wanted to get into writing. Again, it goes back to the eighth grade when I was really impressed with that book of Barbara Tuchman's, and I saw what a writer could do with words to make history come alive, and that's kind of what I wanted to do.
And I imagine that's important to you, is to make history come alive, to let people remember certain things, and many of the things that you talked about with your main character at the beginning here. Um, these might not be typically um, big history book types of education, where we didn't learn about all of these little things. So this is a chance to dig deeper into history and maybe have some fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it took me a long time to write it. It took the first novel, it took about 10, 12 years. And there was constant rewrites of it. But over that time, I really had fun with this character, putting him through all kinds of misadventures and heroic outcomes. Well, then I spilled the ending, didn't I? But anyway, yeah, I have fun writing it, and I went on from there to write three more books of different genres, but never losing my interest in history.
So this is your only historical fiction book, The Lost
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Revolution.
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
tell us about your next book.
The next book I've written, or the book that's in
Yes.
process now. Okay, the next book is a
The,
murder. It's a murder mystery about an artist who gets murdered on page one, and the rest of it is about his artistic rival who grew up with him as a boy, and and discovers, and in the process of investigating the murder, he gets involved in his friend's background that he never knew about, and gets involved in a kind of a dark secret that went back 30 years.
So
So
his rival is the one investigating the murder?
yes, yeah, because they were actual friends, but it's kind of a play on Mozart and Salieri in Amadeus, where they were competitors, and it's kind of like that. But my hero didn't really want to knock off Peter Caruso, which is the name of the artist that gets killed on page one. And besides that, the name of the book is called the Caruso Collection, and the collection refers to a group of paintings by the artist Peter Caruso, which kind of, if you're aware of the secretive nature of Peter Caruso, the paintings tell the story and give a little insight into the dark nature of the secret he had been hiding all his life.
So as with any good mystery, there's many layers of things that will be revealed.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, the original secret goes back to Europe in the 1950s, well, maybe 1960s. But the story takes place in present day. So maybe I'm
Excellent.
confusing the issue.
So that's the second book.
Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to get a feel for each of the novels that you've done, and you've written a third and fourth book. Could you briefly tell us about them? And because it's intriguing that to me that you've written in different genres each time.
I know, I can't help it. I don't know why that is. But the third book I wrote was called A Scientist's Accomplice. It involves it's kind of a road trip adventure that takes place here in the U.S. and in present day, and it involves um, a guy who's down on his luck, and he gets involved with a scientist um, out in the West, in the American West. And in doing so, he gets involved also in the fight for control over a scientific discovery that's been made, and that's really how things evolved. And the first line of the story is it makes reference to what history would one day call the year of the little change. And the little change came about as a result of the scientific discovery. And the story goes on then to tell the story of the scientific discovery that caused the little change in the world. So, and then it sums up at the end of the book with what that change was. And it's a subtle change, but it's a meaningful change. Unlike maybe you might think that when we come out of this pandemic, our lives will be somewhat changed, or society will be a little different than it was going in. That's the kind of change I'm talking about, a subtle change, hopefully for the better, that this book goes into. That's The Scientist's Accomplice. I'm being wordy here, but the last book is Dr. Thornhill's Last Patient. It's about a woman psychologist in the 1920s who dies. Again, on page one, I got this thing about killing people off in the first part of the book. But she has a strange connection with a present day police detective in Boston. And it's that connection which sets up a series of incidents that cause the police detective to realize that his mother, his great great grandmother, this psychologist, is involved in what's going on somehow over time. She's long since deceased, but it's kind of a psychological mystery adventure. I call all my books adventures, but that's how I would pin this one down. A psychological. I hate to use the word thriller, but psychological adventure mystery might be a little bit better. So.
Well, I'm intrigued. You are always changing your genres and changing it up a little bit. Yet, in this short, brief time, you've said just the right things to, I think, get somebody interested in picking up and reading that particular book. So I think you've done a nice job with your elevator pitch for each book.
Well, thanks, Mike. You've been asking the right questions too. Thanks.
Well, and so it doesn't stop there. You're headed to book number 5, and that's out next year.
Probably in March, I'm hoping for. I finished the rough draft, and as with all rough drafts, there's a lot of polishing to do, and deconstruction and reconstruction work. It's an archaeological mystery. It takes place in Central Africa, actually in the Nile Valley, and it involves an archaeological discovery that was made in 1971, but the book primarily takes place in present day and tells the story of a chamber that was found back in 1971 and its importance and its relevance to what's going on in the world today in that area of the world.
Again, interesting, and you've got me intrigued and wanting to know more. So,
if I told you the title, it might intrigue you more, but I'm keeping kind of a close wraps on that one.
So I see it's described as an archaeological thriller.
Again, thriller. I shy away from that, but archaeological mystery, I would call it. It's not really a Indiana Jones kind of thing, so I don't want any reader to think he's going to get involved with that kind of more frivolous side of things. It's a serious. Now I just alienated all the Indiana Jones fans, but there's a lot of action to it, and there's a lot of subtle intrigue and mysteries involved in the book. So I'm really excited to write it. If I can kind of feel if a book is going to do well or be of interest to people. It's when I get excited about it. I left, for example, when I last wrote on this new book, I left my hero in right in the middle of a terrible dilemma. So I've got to somehow extricate him from that, and I've got that worked out. But it's exciting to write a book like that because you don't know, your characters kind of decide on their own what's going to happen next. I mean, you have some control, but man, they kind of take over your book if you don't watch out.
Well, that's true, and that's the interesting part of writing characters is letting them come alive and tell you where the story is going to go. But you must really, I get the feeling you really enjoy writing because of the enthusiasm that you're sharing.
Yeah, I can't do without it. Every morning I start to write, and I write for about 3 hours a day. That's real. I'm drained after that. I'm just physically really worn out because I've been in this case, I've been in Central Africa, working with these archaeologists, and it is draining when you come back to reality and realize, oh, it's mid-afternoon. So yeah, it's something I really enjoy, and I think about a lot during the day, and think about what should happen next. But then my characters come alive and they tell me, oh, we're doing this. Just keep up, So.
Well, and Tom, I know that you participate when in-person events were available to us. You were lots of places, and always talking to readers and people interested in literature.
Sure.
Could you maybe tell one of the nicest things a reader has said to you that has set with you for a while?
Well, there's some very nice reviews on the internet, on Goodreads especially, and especially for the last book I published, Dr. Thornell's Last Patient. Some have called it the best book they've read in years. Others have called it, let's see, one said he read it in a day, that's a little discouraging since it took me a year to have to write. So. Those were nice things to hear. And here again, as you say, I was at I do library events and do the thing at Leon and Lulu's in Clawson on a yearly basis when we can. And I hear a lot of comments there too about the Lost Revolution and a few of the other books that I've written. So it's a very rewarding thing to talk about books. If you get me started talking about books, I could go on for a long time. So
Well,
I enjoy that.
most storytellers can. So that's why you're in your business.
I guess so.
So all 5 books, the 4 that you have now and the one coming up, they're all standalone books.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about returning for a sequel to any of these novels?
Funny that you mentioned that, Michael. I was thinking about this morning, that I might, as a 6th book, come back and do a sequel to The Lost Revolution. A number of people have asked me about that, whether I would do that. And it's an era that where things devolved from 1881, where the Lost Revolution takes place, up until the start of the First World War. The world kind of accelerated over that period of time with new warships and new technologies, and then everything went to hell with with World War One. That really put the world, set the world back on its feet, and that transition from 1881 all the way to 1914 is a very interesting time in history, and I may very well do a sequel on the Lost Revolution. That's the one that where a sequel would, I think, be the most logical and intriguing thing for me to write.
Well, it sounds great to me, and it's always nice to, I think, revisit that first novel and add more to the story.
Sure.
Because as we know, stories never end. We're just looking at a piece of it in a novel, and so best wishes with that. Could you remind everybody where to go to find out more information about you as an author and your books, and maybe where to
Sure.
purchase them?
Sure. My webpage is my website is tomulicny.com. That's TOMULICNY.com. And my books are all on Amazon. You can buy them as an ebook, as a paperback, or as I understand it, they're available on the Kindle Unlimited program. So if you're a subscriber to Kindle Unlimited, you can actually download them free on that program sponsored by Amazon. So if you Google, so simply Google Tom Ulicny, you should come up with a number of sites that will give you more information about where to go and where to look for information on me. But my website's the primary thing. Again, tomulicny.com.
Great. Thank you, Tom Ulicny, author of 4 books, coming up with a 5th one, and we already know what the 6th one may be. Thank you for joining us with the 2nd Authors Fair here at the Rochester Hills Public Library. For Rochester Writers, my name is Michael Dwyer, and we'll have more in a moment.
Thanks, Michael.